What's going on, guys? So today we've got a video here from Eric Bischoff. Now, Eric Bischoff, for those of you that didn't know, was the person basically rivaling Vince McMahon back in the Attitude Era days. He was basically pushing Vince McMahon to change the product because WCW was so good back then. Obviously, he's been in retirement for a long time. Vince McMahon won the Monday Night Wars, but this individual, Eric Bischoff, has a wealth of experience in the business and is basically the only person that took Vince McMahon to task. Now, obviously, it didn't pan out the way he wanted it to, but I always find what he has to say very, very interesting. And what he has said here about AEW is actually something that I agree with. Now, full disclosure, in case you hadn't realized, I've never run a wrestling business. I've never run a media company before. But just being someone that's been watching wrestling since, the first wrestling match I ever saw was The Undertaker versus The Undertaker. Being online, you get to learn about the business on some level, nowhere near the level of this. So with my limited knowledge watching this, I do agree with him. I'm going to go over the video with you guys here, and you guys leave me your thoughts in the comment section below.
There's not a chance any one of those talents are going to be any more valuable as an asset 12 months from now than they are today, or that they were 12 months ago.
So he's essentially talking about AEW. Basically, the premise, as you would have guessed from the title, is that AEW is where careers go to die. And I would have to agree with him. If you're speaking general, if you're speaking overall, I would have to agree with him. Now, does that mean that everybody in AEW has basically failed? No, it doesn't. You've got timeless Tony Storm, who I think is the best thing to come out of AEW, just my opinion. But Tony Storm didn't really have much going for her going into AEW. The WWE didn't really use her effectively, as we've clearly seen, because she's so good at what she does. So she wasn't a big name going in there. What he's talking about is big names. So I'll let him speak and I'll give you my thoughts.
It's a place where your career goes to die. There's no exceptions to the rule. If you have one, I'd like to hear it, but I don't think you do. From Mercedes to Adam Copeland, to Christian, to you name any big star that came over with equity and value and a fan base. And look where they are.
See, now, that's why I mentioned Tony Storm, because she didn't come over with a fan base. As good as Tony Storm is, and like I said, I think she's the best thing in AEW, just my opinion, she didn't have a fan base going into it. Christian, Sasha Banks, or Mercedes went in there with a fan base. Edge, who has changed his name to Cope now, God knows why he did that, but Edge is a legend. Gotta respect the man. If he wants to do that, that's up to him. I will never get it. But all of the people that have come from WWE and gone over to AEW are worse off. And then the ones that have jumped from AEW over to WWE, they're thriving right now. I mean, we're seeing Penta, Cody Rhodes is obviously the world champion. He's had a really cool title reign. He's a massive star, sells tons of merchandise. It's not to say that WWE always handles their talent correctly, because they don't. There's been fumbles. There's been plenty of fumbles. And even in the golden age that we're in right now, the Triple H era, the Renaissance era, not everything has been handled perfectly. But I would say almost everything has been handled poorly with pre-existing fan-based, pre-existing talent that have big fan bases that go over to AEW. That's not me being hateful towards AEW, it's just what you observe. Even somebody like Chris Jericho, who is a legend, no matter what Chris Jericho does now, it's not really going to tarnish everything that he's done before. You can never talk badly on the legacy, but I'd be lying if I said his work in AEW for the last 2 years, I'd say, it's painful. Now, you might make the argument that he's old, he's been there for a long time. Maybe he's run his course and he's just there now. But I don't know, man. Like, Jericho is one of those guys that just continuously reinvented himself. There was no evidence to suggest that the reinventions would ever slow down. But they've slowed down in AEW. It's very hard to get through a Jericho match. It's very hard to get through a Jericho segment now, which wasn't always the case. When he first came over, it was really cool to see him there. I believe he was the first AEW world champion. A little bit of the bubbly. That's a internet meme now. It goes down as an internet meme. But yeah, I agree with him. If you didn't have equity coming into AEW like Tony Storm, then great. But if you did, then it does look like you go downhill. And just to mention Christian, his storylines in AEW, my favorite. Next to TNA. He's been doing great there. But in terms of like elevating him, in terms of like marketing him, I don't think they've done a very good job. I don't really see much of Christian outside of when I'm tuning in. I don't really hear people talking about him much. And to be honest with you, with the things he's done in AEW, I think they probably should. So it goes to the whole marketing side of AEW and how they promote their wrestlers. I really don't think they do a good job of it. They obviously don't have the resources that WWE does, or at least the reach that WWE does. But for the talent that they've got, and they've got some really good wrestlers there, they're not really doing much of anything.
The supposed best in the world Will Ospreay is a bust. He doesn't draw money. If you're one of the small percentage of the audience that just loves wrestling moves for the sake of wrestling moves because it looks kind of like the video game you play, you're happy as hell. The problem is there's not enough of them to build a business around.
He's not wrong there. Even Okada, man, coming over from New Japan Pro Wrestling and seeing what he has become in AEW, and Will Ospreay obviously being over there as well, basically a legendary wrestler at this point in terms of just in-ring ability. I'm not very fond of him on the mic, but obviously those are things that can be improved, but no one can deny his wrestling ability. But man, it has been a drag watching him in AEW. It has been a drag. MJF is another one where when CM Punk was there, and I guess in the earlier days, MJF was riding a high, but it's hard to get through anything in AEW now. It's really, really difficult. You know, time is precious, and it's getting to the point now, I think it's gotten to the point for a lot of people where they're just like, I can't watch this anymore. It's so silly. It feels silly. I feel like I'm wasting my time.
And by focusing on that aspect of the product and the talent in it, you're turning the vast majority of the audience off. You're killing that character by focusing on that aspect of the business. There's just not one piece of talent there that is more valuable today than they were yesterday. Look what's happened to MJF, for crying out loud. That was almost too hard to screw up.
Yep. That's what I was saying. There was a time where I thought MJF was going to go over to WWE, and I really feel like he should have if he had the opportunity. But he stayed in AEW, I guess because he believed in the product. And again, for me now, as somebody that was singing MJF's praises, and I know that if MJF went over to WWE, he'd be a champion. Whatever championship belt that might be, he would. And he'd entertain the crowds. He's good. He's good. He's solid. And from what I've heard from people, he's a good person as well. So he'd probably get on well with people. But yeah, in AEW, it's painfully boring to watch. I feel like he's just regurgitating the same stuff over and over again. And it's some wrestlers do that and they can get away with it. But the way AEW presents their wrestlers, it's not very good. So it's a shame.
Flat as can be. John Moxley, are you kidding me? The whole Death Riders, whatever that is, it ain't working.
True.
The only thing that death is riding is the audience away from the product.
So Eric Bischoff isn't wrong. I mean, John Moxley, Dean Ambrose in the WWE, it was not great for him. You know, he was under Vince's rule, and after he left the Shield, things didn't go particularly well. He did win the WWE Championship, but I wouldn't say it was a particularly memorable run. The way he won it was memorable, but outside of that, it wasn't great. But yeah, no, I can't watch John Moxley in AEW. It's painful. And I don't think it's any of these wrestlers. I think it's the booking. I think it's Tony Khan. I think it's the people that are in charge of writing the show. AEW is not a good product, which sucks because it's good to have multiple wrestling products available. TNA, for example, I can watch TNA. Even before they signed their WWE deal, I could watch TNA. Could sit there and be like, okay, do you know what? This is cool. This is all right. You know, it's not WWE levels, but it's good. They've got good talent down there. There's good promos. There's good spots. But AEW, man, it feels like a parody of wrestling almost. And they do this thing in AEW where they just use spots continuously, like big high spots, big memorable moments. It's every other move. Finishers mean absolutely nothing in AEW. Everyone's hitting their finishes on each other and they're standing up. No selling is like the name of the game over in AEW, and it just takes you out of it. I know you're supposed to suspend your disbelief with wrestling, but it's a bit too much. It's a bit too much in my opinion. So I know people are not happy with Eric Bischoff saying this, at least people that watch AEW, but he's not lying. Their stock does not go up when they're in that company. There are quite a few people in that company that I'd like to see come over to WWE. MJF obviously being one of them. Toni Storm, I think if she took her timeless Toni Storm gimmick and brought it over to WWE with Triple H at the helm, I think she'd do really, really well. Jade Cargill's obviously already gone. Cody's already gone. Penta's gone. Will Ospreay, I think, would be pretty cool if they could utilize him correctly because he's so good in the ring. Okada would be really, really good. And then there's some talent at AEW that they push that I don't ever want to see in the WWE. Like, I'd never want to see the Young Bucks, for example. But that's just me. Their style of wrestling and the way they do their promos, it's not for me. Not to say they're not good wrestlers. Obviously, they've been around the world and won multiple titles, but we're all fans of different things, right? So, in closing, I think Eric Bischoff is completely right. I think he's justified on what he's saying. I don't think it's hateful. I don't think it's unjust. I think the writing is on the wall for AEW. I think they've just signed a deal again, and, you know, Tony Khan has got endless amounts of money, so I don't think the show is going anywhere. But what I do think is going to happen is I do think that unless they change their tune and they change the way they book the wrestlers and book the entire show, the numbers are going to continue to dwindle. It's going to continue to lose to NXT, and it's never going to be seen as a legitimate rival to WWE. WWE has just signed TNA to them basically, so they've gotten even bigger, and WWE's in their golden age right now, their renaissance era. So it does just kind of feel that AEW started off really good and it's just gone downhill horribly. But you guys let me know what you think. I'm in agreement with Eric Bischoff. I'll read your comments and I'll reply to whatever you guys have to say. I know that IWC is very, very opinionated when it comes to these sort of things, so I'll catch you guys very soon. Take care and peace.